to make this little quick and easy soap, I call it like a soap pocket or a little soap holder, we're going to use 2 strands of worsted weight yarn. I would recommend using a cotton yarn if you have any in your stockpile. I just didn't, and I would probably use 2 strands of them when we're using this nifty knitter. I think it's called the Flower Loom. It has 12 pegs on it. So again, try to find 2 strands of cotton yarn if you can. If not, we're going to use the worsted weight yarn that I have here. We're going to first do the drawstring cast on, and because we have this little knob on the outside, we're actually going to use that to our advantage, and we're going to attach that there while we work the drawstring cast on. We're going to work back and forth, weaving it back and forth to do the drawstring cast on. When you get back to the beginning, you're going to lay it in front, and then you're going to knit the bottom 2 strands over the top wherever there are two rows present. So we got 2 rows here, so go ahead and knit that over, keeping it in front. We don't need to do there. We go to the next spot that there are 2, and we knit over again, and you're just going to work this around the loom. And then we get to the last one here, and we work this one over as well. And when you look, we're back to the beginning, and now what we're going to do is push all these down as we get ready to work our first actual row. So we're going to go ahead, and we're just going to do one quick row of E-wrap knit. Okay. Now what I want you to do is go ahead and do a purl row. Okay, the last row, or last peg. Again, push these down out of your way. And now what you're going to do is we're going to do, we're going to do the tight stitch where we wrap all the pegs, so that we end up having 3 loops on there, and then we knit the bottom one over the top 2. And now what you can do at this point too is, since you've already done a couple rows, you can take this tail off of there and then gently put it on the inside so it's out of your way when you're doing other stuff, and we'll later on gently pull this to close off the circle on the bottom. So again, I'm going to do the tight stitch, so we're just going to wrap, and make sure you don't wrap too tight, because if you do it too tight it's going to make it hard to work, so just gently let it go through your fingers. And again, we want there to be 3 strands. So what you're going to do, the best thing I would say, because we have 2 strands of yarn we're working at once, would be to work each peg at a time to make sure you know that you got all of the bottom. So again, we're using 2 strands. We'll make sure we get the bottom 2 loops that go with the 1 first row up over the top 2. So we're still left with 2 on there. Go to the next peg. Again, take the bottom over the top 2. Okay, we're getting back to the beginning again. Okay, and the last one. Okay, now if you want to see whether this is ready to pull off, you can gently pull it, and it's going to start closing this off, but we're not quite ready yet. When you tug it, it starts to move in, but we want to do a few more rows. So that's a way you can kind of check when it's ready. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to do 2 more rows of the tight stitch, and then we'll come back and move on to the next part. Okay, so we've done the 2 extra rows of the tight stitch, and again you can still check if you're able to pull this off. You would just gently pull it. As you can see, we're able to close off that hole, so keep pulling until you get it as close as you can. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's okay if there's a little hole. Again, we're only putting soap in this afterwards, so it doesn't seem to matter as much. And now we're going to just close off this on the inside. So we're going to do that on the inside because our design is obviously on this side. So you're going to take your crochet hook and you're going to bring those strands on the inside. So you're going to go through the leftover hole, like the little bit of hole that I still had. We're going to go grab our 2 strands and just move them onto the inside so that we can work with them on this side. And then when you're working on the inside, I'm going to separate them, and I'm going to go over onto this side into any kind of loop that I can get my hook into. I'm going to grab this one and I'm going to pull it through, and I'm going to tie this off. And now I'm going to go over to this side. Again, it doesn't have to perfectly be closed off. We're using this for soap, so it's not going to matter if the hole isn't 100% closed off. So just find a loop, take one of the strands through it, and go ahead and tie it off again. And one more knot. And then you can go ahead and leave a little bit of stragglers if you want. They're going to be on the inside, they're not going to be really seen. And now, oops, as you can tell, it's closed off, and we can continue working the project and not have to worry about it. We're creating the little pocket for it to sit in. Excuse me. Is we're going to keep working a different type of stitch. We're going to do a rib stitch because I like the texture that the rib stitch usually gives. And so when we knit this time, we got our 2 strands. We're going to go ahead and knit this one. Taking the bottom 2 loops that were left over top of the top 2. Go to the next. And this time we have to purl this one because we're doing the rib stitch. So it's going to be a little tougher. That's why it's important that you didn't wrap too tight. Take those both off, purl, and go ahead to the next one. And knit. The next one to purl. and continue this to the end of the row, and we'll meet back here at the beginning. Okay, we finished up our first row of doing the rib stitch, so now we're left with just the normal 2 strands on each, and we're going to continue. This time I'm going to do a little different than we've been doing. Like I said, we just did the rib stitch. Just get this in the lighting better. I'm going to create some eyelet stitch, because again, this is going to hold soap. It's not going to matter if there's some gaps in it, so I thought it'd be really nice to kind of go ahead and you're going to knit one, and then I want you to move this over. Knit it over. Okay. Now go to the next and knit it. Go to the one over here, we're going to knit it. And we're going to move it over. Knit it over. So you're going to end up having like a space empty, then 2 with not a space. So we got a space empty. We're going to leave these 2 alone after we knit this over. Go to this one and knit it. Move it over. Knit over. Knit this one over. Knit this one. And move it over. And knit it over. So this kind of creates just a little bit of gap and a different texture. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do a simple E-wrap row knit, and what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we wrap, excuse me, oh, we got to do this, we got to knit this one, sorry, I forgot to get to the last peg here. Knit that one over. Okay, and now you're going to re-wrap, and you're going to wrap the empty pegs, and you're going to E-wrap knit. So I'm wrapping first until I get back to the beginning, and then I'm going to go ahead and knit over. Knitting only where there's 2 strands, 2 loops on there. Go ahead and push that down. As you see, we're creating the pocket for the soap to go through, and we'll have these little gaps to kind of help the soap through, but we're not going to put too many holes in it. We just want to put a hole here and there just so you can kind of see where the soap would be. So now what we want to do is we're going to, we're going to do a few more rows of E-wrap knit. Like I said, we got our nice little base here for the soap to go in, so we need to do a few more rows of E-wrap knit before we end up taking this off. I wanted this to be hopefully a quick little project. I didn't want to have a lot of detail with it, just something quick and easy you can make for the home. So go ahead and we'll just do plain E-wrap knit, or you can change up your stitch. And we're just going to do E-wrap knit, and go ahead and do, I'm not sure how many rows I'm going to do yet, so I'm going to keep working this, and then you're going to do as many rows as you see right here, and then we'll come back and we'll work on closing this off. So again, keep working just a regular E-wrap knit for that many rows, and we'll come back and we will close it off. After completing the 6 rows, it should look like this. Again, you're going to be able to see the big gaps we did at the beginning, just to be able to grip onto the soap more. And what I'm using as an example of my soap is this Tom's and Maine one. It actually smells like lavender. It's really nice. And what's great about using this loom is you can just easily slip in whatever bar of soap your family normally uses to get a gauge of size, and then you can see how it's going to look. If you push it way down, it's stretching that out, but if you do a few more rows, it won't be so stretched out, and you still have the holes here to get the suds through. So that's what I was kind of using as a guideline on how many rows I needed to do, was just pick your favorite soap and kind of use it in the pocket, and you'll see that we get this kind of cute little thing to hold on to when we're using our soap. So again, I'm just going to need to do a couple more things here, and we'll be able to take this off and have a cute little soap caddy or pocket or whatever you want to call it. What I'm going to do right now, though, is I'm going to do a quick row of the tight stitch just before I take it off. So we're going to remember the tight stitch. One that I do is we wrap the pegs so they each have 3 loops on them, and we take the bottom one over the top 2. Beginning, go ahead and do one more row of this tight stitch. So again, we're just going to work our way back around it one more time. You can choose to wrap more than one peg at once, or I usually wrap 1 to 2 pegs when I'm working a stitch like this, and then work it like that. It makes it easier for me to control how tight I'm holding the yarn. At the beginning, we're going to do a row of the rib stitch, where we're going to knit one and then we're going to purl the other. And again, because we have 2 strands on, we're just going to be working both those loops to come off. So now we're just going to work the rib stitch, where we're going to wrap it, e-wrap it, and make sure you get the bottom 2 loops that were already on there up and over the top one. And then go to the next one and purl it, going through those 2 loops to create a loop. Now back to the knit. Purl. And continue this around. Last couple we have to do, so we just got to do a knit on this one, and a purl on this one. Okay, and this should definitely be big enough for our soap, and you can easily. For this part, we're going to actually bind off some of the pegs we have and only work certain pegs for a certain amount of time. We're going to create the flap that's going to tuck inside this pocket when you have your soap in there. So the first thing we're going to do excuse me, is we're going to bind off half of the pegs. So that means we're going to go ahead and we're just going to take it from half. We're using this as our starting point. So we're going to knit this one over, move it over. Like that, we're just binding off some of the pegs. Knit over. And we're going to wrap it one more time. And move it over. Knit over. Wrap it one more time. We're going to bind off 6 out of the 12 pegs. So we've got 2 of them bound off, and then we'll move it over. Oops. Lost the loop. Get back on there. Knit over. Wrap one more time. Move it over. Okay. Knit over. Now see, we got our 1, 2, 3, 4. This is our 5th peg that we're binding off. And now we're moving on to the 6th peg. So again, you can just count it. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is our last peg that we're binding off. And move it over to this peg. Now what you're going to do is you're just going to work these 6 pegs to create our flap. And we're just going to keep it as a garter stitch this time. So we're going to go ahead really quickly and just do our E-wrap. Now go ahead and purl that row. And again, you're going to work E-wrap knit on the way back. So what you're going to do is continue this, where you knit a row and then purl a row until and count them as a set, which means one set knit purl is a set. So like one row of knit, one row of purl is one set. We're going to look at it that way. Complete this many sets, and then we'll come back here to actually finish binding this off. After completing 10 sets of doing the garter stitch, it should look like this. You got your little pouch here for the soap, and then you got your flap here that will tuck in. Now we just need to bind this part off. So we're going to do our crochet bind off that we normally been doing, that you know how to do from other videos. You're going to re-wrap that same peg once, twice, then move it over. Knit over, wrap again, wrap one more time, move over. Okay, we're getting to the last peg here. Knit over. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take and cut yourself a working tail. Doesn't have to be too long. Okay, and then you're going to take a crochet hook. You're going to lift off that loop, place it on your crochet hook. And this time I want to kind of make sure I'm on the inside of the project. And you take the working tail again, however much of a tail you left, lead that right through. Missy one. I missed one. Go ahead and put an extra knot in it. And if you want, you can weave in the ends a little bit along the side. then you can retrim this down. And then you can stretch this out a little bit, just to and you can take this other tail and hide it back in there. Then, all you'd have to do now is take whatever soap you're going to use, tuck it in the one side, again, down as far as you can, then take your flap, and you have two choices. You can choose to add maybe a small button on the outside, and then have the button closed so it's on the outside like this, or you can take and actually tuck it into the pouch. And that's one of the reasons you have this extra hole. You can use that hole to your advantage to kind of tuck it down in. And then the soap becomes all hidden in the project, and you can use this when you're showering to get extra sudsy and keep all your soap from slipping out of your hands. So again, it's just going to depend on the soap you use and how you want the flap to be. If you want it to tuck in on the inside, again, that's why if you have that hole, you can use that to help pull it down through and tuck it in so it's a little soap pocket. And again, you can easily pull it out and decide that maybe you want it on the outside, then just get a button, and it almost would stretch around. You put a small button at the end where it's not in your way, and then you'd have the scrubby side, and you could use it that way too. So again, this is a simple little soap pocket. I hope you like it, and have a great day, everyone.